What is good, everyone? Welcome to the channel. My name is Paul. I make videos about Japanese society, life, and culture from the viewpoint of a long-term foreign resident. I've been here for actually going on 19 years now, and today I have with me a guest who has been on the channel before, way back at the beginning of the pandemic. We did a Zoom call because he is a Japan veteran, lived in Japan for 5 years, and now lives in Kentucky, back in the US. And basically, we wanted to do his take on how Japan has changed, because he's a Japan veteran that he lived here for quite some time, but has been away from Japan for quite some time, and certainly hasn't been back during the pandemic years. So, Josh, welcome back to the channel, and let's just start with your background a little bit. I mentioned that you lived here before. Can you just talk about that a little bit?
I did 5 years teaching English. You only did 3 to start.
Yeah. So you actually stayed here longer initially.
But there's a caveat to that. We both came on the JET program. You got into the program the first year.
Mm-hmm.
I did not, and I got in the next year. I reapplied, and I really wanted to do it, and I got in the next year. And you were in Fuji Yoshida, and I was in Minami Alps City, which is basically on the other side of the mountains from Fuji Yoshida. So
yeah, it was quite the coincidence that you actually managed to get into the same prefecture as me, because
well,
that's
I requested,
which is
because you were here, and so I mean, how many people request Yamanashi?
I suppose
nobody's heard of Yamanashi.
Sure,
it's like how many people heard of Wisconsin if you don't live there, you know?
Yeah.
You don't live in America.
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't heard of Yamanashi before I found myself living in it. So.
Yeah. So I mean, so I was in Minami Alps City at that time it was up to 3 years on JET, which is why you left at 3 years.
Yeah, exactly.
And my city offered me a private contract when those 3 years were up. I believe now they'll do it up to 5 years on JET.
So, okay, so you went on to a private contract for 2 years after JET. Was that renewable indefinitely if you wanted to?
That was the big question. They did offer me for a 6th year to stay, a 3rd year on the private contract. And so, I mean, it could have been, but it was kind of clear. I was watching what was happening around me. Mm-hmm. It looked like they were trying to go to those headhunter companies.
You kind of saw writing on the wall and decided to head back.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that was just in my head, but it was going around, and when other friends did leave, who worked for the same BOE, other English teachers, that is what they did.
Right.
So they offered me to stay, but another big thing, another reason that I left then, as opposed to taking another year, was I had just gotten married the year before, and as an ALT, you're never going to get a raise. You're never going to get a promotion. So if I'm going to go and start a life, raise a family,
on a salary that never moves.
On a salary that never moves. And I have friends who said you can have a wife and a family on an ALT salary, but it is close. It is tight. My BOA was very good to me. My coworkers were great. I love my school. I love my students. Most of the time there's always let's get rid of the stereotype of the perfect Japanese student. Those are lies. Vicious lies. And I believe I said that perhaps on the last video. But I've been making that joke for 20 years now.
Alright, so you went back to the States, and how many times have you come back to Japan to visit since then?
This is my 3rd or 4th trip.
Okay.
And there's always a story.
So if you came back to the States in 2008,
yes.
That means you've come back like once every 3 or 4 years is kind of how it's been.
About. I came back a year and a half that December I came back a year and a half after moving. So that December, that Oshigatsu, the New Year's time. But that was really good because I was missing Japan. I had just moved back, and I moved back because I needed to move on with my life, not because I'm like, I'm done with Japan. It wasn't like that. So I came back, I saw some of my old students, and that gave me a lot of closure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it took you a while to kind of adjust back to the States and like not miss Japan so much? Because obviously, if you came back only every 3 or 4 years, the fact that the first time you came back was only a year and a half after you left.
Yeah, I'm like, I gotta get back there. And my wife was actually already, she came over and I'm like, should I go? Should I spend the money? Because I was in graduate school, I didn't have a job. I was supposed to get hired as a special ed teacher on an alternative certification program where I could get a job while I was working on my degree and my certification. And it didn't happen that way. So I'm going to grad school with no job and burning through money and
buying international plane tickets.
and I'm like, should I do it? Should I do it? And I'm like, and eventually I'm like, I'm doing this. And I dropped down $1,500 for an international plane ticket because I booked it like a week before I left.
Not for international ticket, for your closure.
For my closure, yes.
Then you visited a few more times after that. What was the most recent time you visited before this trip right now?
2016 in the summer.
Okay, so that means it's been almost 8 years then.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
I thought it was closer to 6. No, you're right. Yeah.
This is 2023.
Yeah.
Given that huge gap,
Yeah.
what has like stood out to you as like something that's really changed, maybe because of the pandemic or just because of the amount of time you've been gone?
And there's always some good questions about whether or not it's because of the pandemic or because it just changed. It's been a long time. I mean, buildings that I used to be familiar with are gone. I mean, some of my favorite stores have disappeared. My very favorite restaurant, possibly in the world, closed this December.
So you just missed it.
We just missed it. Apparently, from what somebody told me, the master retired.
So not COVID related, not pandemic.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
But I mean, things like that.
Okay, yeah, that's true. Like, we were just commenting, I mean, you were just commenting before we started filming that all of the restrooms here in Japan have hand dryers that are turned off. And that's entirely because of the pandemic.
And
that's why
anyone
none of those are
who's
used.
ever been to Japan before really probably knows that your average public restroom in Japan does not have paper towels. Sometimes they do. Sometimes you can find them.
Typically in private businesses like restaurants and things will have paper towels, but like a public restroom like in a station or in a park or something like that. It's kind of a tip for traveling here is Japanese tend to have a
Bring a little handkerchief with you or a small little hand towel with you. But one thing I did notice that changed is there are dryers now. And they're those high velocity hand dryers which they didn't have here when I moved in 2008. And they have those here now.
Yeah, they're everywhere, but
they're all shut down, so...
It'll be interesting to see when they might go back to actually using them again because, you know, it was in March when the government said, okay, you don't have to wear a mask anymore if you don't want on transportation, and slowly but surely masks are dropping now.
And I did notice, because, you know, my home city is Inaka, meaning it's the countryside, and one thing about Japan, this is just an observation, I've always heard it, but you know, now I'm really noticing it because I'm paying attention to it. People in the countryside are old. Like, everyone out there is in their 60s or 70s, and every last one of them in the countryside, everyone is wearing a mask.
And that's interesting because I actually had a prediction in my head that it would drop in the countryside more quickly because there's less population density, people aren't riding trains together, they're driving in their own car. So I thought that would mean that people would be quicker to shed the mask, but apparently that's not the case.
When I got on the train and I arrived in Tokyo, the Tokyo area, Hachioji, to transfer down here, I made it a point to look, and I definitely noticed, one, people were younger, and people in the Tokyo area were not wearing as many masks.
Yeah. Even since I made my masks wearing video 3 weeks ago, I did a video basically showing that everyone's still wearing masks despite the government proclamation.
I agreed with your prediction on that.
But it's starting.
Yeah.
The masks are slowly being shed.
Yeah.
I'm seeing less and less people wearing them, so it's definitely,
Yeah.
it's happening. So those of you who are thinking, oh my God, I don't want to go to Japan while everyone's wearing masks, or I don't want to have to wear a mask, it's actually becoming finally normalized. It's going, we're not back to the pre-pandemic where it was about 70-30, where 30% of people who had like allergies and like a cold
Would
wear a mask, but we're not to that yet, but it's definitely less and less.
During the pandemic in America, everyone freaked out and got toilet paper for some reason. Everyone was joking how that doesn't make any sense, but it happened. So what did people do? They started buying those fancy Japanese bidet toilets with the heated seats and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
What I definitely noticed is those things are so much more common in Japan. And maybe that's just the passage of time and the standard that things are that people want. But I think it's probably more of a Corona thing. That's my guess.
Maybe, but I would say that even before Corona, the station, a lot of stations and outdoor park toilets kind of went through reforms, and like the old style pit squat toilet.
I haven't seen a single one of those since I've been
They're
here.
becoming incredibly rare. Like the station where I usually catch the train used to have a men's restroom that had it only had squat toilets, and there were 3 of them in a row or whatever, and now it's completely revamped restroom, no squat toilets at all, and that's just been the case like everywhere.
Do they have, so they have the comfort seats, but do they have the
Oh yeah,
heated seats?
everything has the push button flush.
That's impressive.
Like you don't see the lever flushes anymore.
I have notes here, crib sheets. So what else has changed or not changed? Wi-Fi on the train.
Yeah, Japan used to be a
Dead zone for Wi-Fi.
yeah, black hole, lack of
And-
Wi-Fi anywhere.
And smartphones hadn't started. The iPad Touch had just come out my last year in Japan, I believe.
Okay, yeah.
So
Yeah, iPhone was 2008?
that was about the time. Smartphones came out. I think,
Right about the time.
Right about the time I left. Right about the time I left. I think it was right after I left or right before. And so smartphones weren't a thing, so Wi-Fi wasn't as big of a deal.
Mhm.
But everyone kept telling me how Wi-Fi, you can't find Wi-Fi anymore. Now I can find Wi-Fi on the trains. Japan still is not as Wi-Fi saturated as the United States.
It's not as readily available.
It's not as readily available, but it's certainly very.
It's improving.
It's improving considerably. Everywhere I went has had Wi-Fi. I will say this, my mother-in-law was in the hospital for surgery. That's actually why we came in here. She's okay. But the hospital my mother-in-law was staying at did not have Wi-Fi.
Hospitals still expect you to like sit in bed and do nothing all day.
Yeah.
Like that's hospital. They still have like the TV cards. You have to pay for a TV card to like make the TV work.
I've never stayed in a Japanese hospital, so. Another thing that's changed, this has actually changed while I was here.
Okay.
This one has changed while I was here, bike helmets.
Oh.
So my plane left March 22nd. April 1st, bike helmets became legally mandated for everyone.
I mean, no one wears helmets except if you're one of those serious bicyclists who has
Yeah.
like the outfit and everything.
Yeah.
So it's going to remain to be seen if the police actually enforce this law. Because I'm going to be honest with you, I haven't been paying attention. I didn't even know this was a thing that passed. Like
I mentioned, yeah.
you telling me this yesterday, I think.
Yeah,
You
and
mentioned.
I pointed out as we were walking down the street after I mentioned it to you, yeah, there goes a guy who's not wearing a helmet.
I think most
So-
people are still not wearing.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't have them on. So, what else has changed on my list? This almost certainly from the pandemic, contactless pay. You don't have to physically touch anyone anymore. You go to you pay somebody, you might have actually mentioned this in a video. You go up, somebody, or maybe somebody else told it to me. You go to a convenience store, you walk into 7-Eleven, you present your items to the person, they ring you up, they gesture towards the machine, and you put your money into the machine.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they're still ringing you up, but now
You're-
everything is like the payment is all you doing by yourself.
Yeah, and while you're there, you can choose from one of like 15 different point cards they accept. They had point cards when I was here, but
Yeah, you got
like
T-point card, Rakuten point card, T-point card.
my wife pointed this out.
The-
We were
the actual shops card. Like,
we were getting like
It's pretty
we were at a beef bowl restaurant, going through the drive-through, and she's like, "Why are there so many point cards?"
yeah.
So, but on the topic of restaurants, people have the image of Japan and robots and everything. Well, my wife sent me a video shortly after they got here. They arrived before I did. They went to a family restaurant, and their food was delivered via robot.
Yeah. Those are showing up more and more in family restaurants. So like big chain restaurants, they've got these kind of, robot waiters that bring food out, and they have a sensor. So as soon as you've taken all the plates off, it'll rumble back to the kitchen on its own. And everywhere like that now is touch panel order. You don't order to wait staff.
Oh yeah, I've noticed that started the last time I visited. I saw touch panel order. I think it might have been starting before I left.
And I have to say, this is not something I entirely understand, because I think this is business and saving money on the cost of staff thing. I don't think this is a pandemic thing, because if you think about it, you've created a system at each table and at each cash register where everyone's touching the same places every other customer has touched. So that seems less sanitary than...
Assuming you're not cleaning them, though. If you're cleaning
Well,
them,
I don't know. Is the wait staff wiping down the touch panels after every
that is the
customer?
question.
I don't know.
Knowing Japan, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I think I'd have to like pay attention next time I go to a restaurant and they clean a table. How, like, do they just
Yeah.
put if the touch panel is in its cradle, do they even do anything with it?
Another thing I noticed is, you talked about this in some of your videos, I believe, how Japan is not as clean as people think it is.
Sure.
I
Okay.
mean, in the cities, I was walking down the street in Yokohama just a few hours ago, and I saw people literally picking up trash, like, city
Yeah.
workers picking up trash. We have that to an extent in the United States as well. But Japan, you don't usually see garbage on the
We
street.
have just people who live in the neighborhood will go out and pick up trash.
Yeah.
It's like a matter of keeping their neighborhood clean.
And I remember, I haven't done this yet this trip. One of my favorite things to do was go up and drive up in the mountains in the South Japanese Alps. And they were dumping grounds.
Mm-hmm.
I found scooters that looked like they'd just been shoved off the side of the cliff.
Yeah.
I found a tire floating in the reservoir made by a dam. I saw a sign that I'm pretty sure was saying no dumping, and the reason I'm saying pretty sure is because there were pictures on the sign saying, it was like a cartoon raccoon or something, saying don't jump here, and there was all these things behind the raccoon in the picture, and that looked like a checklist. Like, if it wasn't out in the middle of the mountains, like out like a 10-15 minute drive up winding hills, I would think that was an actual dump site, like an official dump site.
Just go on a rural mountain road and you're gonna find where the trash actually ends up.
Or at least maybe before. I used to go to a park, not far from.
Oh, so this is the difference.
This is a difference.
Okay.
And I have pictures of just garbage in that river, like plastic bag. I think they made it, you have to pay for plastic bags, like 5 yen for a plastic bag, and they'll ask you if you want one. That, I think, has helped a lot. You see plastic convenience store bags everywhere. And then related garbage too. So that's helped. But this river in this park was clean this time. When I went there a
How many masks were in it?
Very few. I think maybe I saw one.
Yeah, I've definitely seen more masks
Yeah.
as litter because of the pandemic.
Well, I've definitely seen more masks in the States as later.
For sure.
But, I mean,
Okay.
everything definitely does look a little bit cleaner. Another thing that's changed though, I'm just remembering this wasn't even in the notes that I wrote down. It used to be almost every car in Japan was what color?
White.
White. And you don't
We
pay.
didn't practice that. We
Yes,
just know it.
yes, we know
White
it.
cars. It used to be.
But yeah, now you're seeing a lot more colors in cars. The classic Japanese K truck, the little Japanese farm truck. Every last one of them. I don't think they were even available in any other color. And I mean that because
You never saw it.
I
White.
never saw one that was not white. And now and I was walking down the street a little bit after I like, I see one for sale. I'm like, that K truck looks gray. This one's blue. What, I mean,
Yeah.
they're
yeah.
color. You can buy them in all sorts of colors now.
Yeah. That's actually true. Now that I think about it, it used to be that it was incredibly noticeable that so many cars on the road were white, and you almost felt like you were standing out by having a non-white car. I see a lot more custom paint jobs these days, so I mean, Japan has always been a car-loving country, but for some reason, for the longest time, that didn't seem to lend itself to a variety of color, despite loving automobiles. But now it seems that the Japanese consumer wants a car that's something other than white.
So
All right, dude. This video is going to be pretty long as it is, so let's stop off here. I would like to do a video with you in the future if possible, but thank you so much for agreeing to do it today. I have to apologize to the audience. Why are we doing this in a static room today rather than walking around? It's just really windy and threatening rain outside, so we couldn't film outside like I normally would like to do, but thank you very much for bearing with the kind of boring background. Thank you very much for agreeing to do a video with me, Josh, and hopefully this is not the last time we'll be able to do one. And
certainly not.
thank all of you for watching this particular video. I will be dropping one every week as usual on Friday or Saturday, depending on your time zone. And I'll catch you next time. Peace.
Hold it, boss. This has been a Fuzz Defus production in association with Captain Firefrog Productions.